way in which the Matildas have captured the heart of the nation is, it's staggering. It's actually staggering. I don't know where to start. I don't know where to go. I'm actually still kind of speechless, right? I think it's fair that I start in chronological order. That's a Denmark game. The Denmark game was Monday night. So I had filmed the last week's episode without knowing the result of the Denmark game, and subsequently without knowing the results or the potential result of the quarterfinal should Australia have beaten Denmark, and without knowing the results of that quarterfinal should it have fallen the way that it has. I was nervous. We beat Canada relatively convincingly, 4-0, got through, no dramas. And then the game against Denmark proved to be a game where we just had to get the job done, and we did get the job done. It was pretty convincing without being extremely kind of exceptional. And it gave people a lot of confidence heading into this heading into the game against France. But that game against Denmark was really weird because we all felt like something was about to happen. We all felt like something was on the precipice of happening. And we all felt that the country was about to experience sporting history. It was a game where a lot of people expected the Matildas to win, but in Matildas fashion and in Australian football fashion, nothing is never as easy as it is. Nothing is ever as simple or as down the line as we're the favourites, so we're going to win. It's very rarely the case, right? There's always some drama behind it. There's always some kind of extenuating circumstances which makes supporting Australia in any international competition the most excruciating thing in the world, because we never do it the easy way. We always make it as hard as humanly possible. Obviously, this game probably bucks that trend a little bit. Caitlin Ford scores inside half an hour. Beautiful counter-attack. Fowler with one of the best balls you're ever going to see. Just a picture-perfect through ball to Caitlin Ford, who takes a touch and scores quite easily through the keeper's legs. And then just with 20 minutes to play, Haley Razzo finds some space at the back post off a pass from Emily Van Egmond, I think it was, and scores 2-0, no dramas. Lovely stuff, right? Kerr comes on, much to the kind of, I want to say dismay, but much to the confusion, considering that she came on, we were already 2-0 up. Like, why would you risk her? Maybe it was to get minutes into her legs. Maybe it was just to get the body ticking over. She comes on, doesn't really have an impact, but had this moment that had hearts in mouths of all Australian football fans, or all Australians around the country, where she slipped and fell and looked like her knee had contorted in 4 different directions. She was fine, got through the game unscathed, and we all moved on to France in the quarterfinals. Saturday afternoon, 5 o'clock, and the country... This is where... Also, just following. So, that game had the Matildas 2-0 victory against Denmark, reached 6.54 million people on Channel 7 and 7 Plus, with an average audience during the game of 3.56 million, making it the number 1 rated show of the year. That doesn't take into account live sites. That doesn't take into account pubs, people watching it together, and also Optus Sport. 4 factors that bump up those numbers incredibly, right? And the reason I want to touch on this is I want to touch on it when I speak about the other point, or the point which I'll expand on with the France game. But the country, in the lead up to the game against France on Saturday afternoon, was one of the most palpable atmospheres, walking around the city, walking around just the suburbs, just going about your day. You'd flick on the TV, it'd be about the Matildas. You flick on the radio, it's about the Matildas. You check the back page of the paper, Matildas. Social media, the Matildas. You couldn't escape it. And there was this kind of unilateral partisan support behind these girls who, according to some people, haven't been able to cut through in this country. I can tell you right now, even before the France game, everyone knew who the Matildas were. Everyone knows who Caleb Ford is now. Everyone knows who Hayley Raso is now. Everyone knows who all of those girls are, right? Because they're making history even before the France game. And the way the country was able to unite together, backing the Matildas, obviously, for those who don't know, the footballing landscape in Australia. Obviously, Australians who are listening to this will fully understand, but I'll give context for those who aren't Australian listening to this, or for those who just aren't that initiated. Football in this country has been treated for the longest time like a third tier sport, not even a fourth tier sport, right? It's always been footy. So AFL, NRL, Aussie rules, rugby league, rugby union, cricket, basketball, athletics, swimming. Football in this country has been a third tier sport, a fourth tier sport for the longest time. And it's not only football, but women's football in particular has been the lowest tier sport for a long time in this country. And those who support it, like, I don't speak about women's football that much on this podcast because, quite frankly, I don't know. I feel like I would be doing it a disservice by speaking about it when I don't know everything. I'm becoming far more knowledgeable about it now throughout the World Cup, and so I'm speaking about it more. But I don't watch every single A-League women's game. I'm just going to be upfront and honest. I don't watch every single A-League women's game, and I'm not going to come on here and pretend that I know everything, right? When there are far more qualified people who watch the A-League women every single week, who are, like, Dub Zone is an incredible show on the Keep Up YouTube channel, which is basically just Goal Rush, but basically Goal Rush for Optus Sport, but it's like four pundits speaking about all the women's games that are on simultaneously over the weekend. It's great. Watch that if you want to adore women's football as much as a lot of people do. Watch that show. You'll learn a lot. But I'm trying to learn more. Right? I'm trying to educate myself, and this World Cup has allowed me to educate myself a lot more. But what I always understood was the circumstances that was the difficulties that women's footballers and women's footballers face in this country, because it's, as a football fan, you don't not know, right? And to see all the scenes around the country, to see a lot of people, and to see organisations who have disregarded football in itself get behind the Matildas is really special. And I point to the MCG, right? I point to the MCG. So the MCG, the Melbourne Cricket Ground, for those who don't know, is the biggest stadium in the country. For those who aren't Australian, the biggest stadium in the country, and it's not been used at all for any of the Women's World Cup. Part of the reason because of this is because the AFL refused to give it up. So the AFL refused to give it up, and also because it's not really a footballing stadium, right? But to me, what the MCG symbolises is the MCG symbolises everything that, the MCG symbolises the antithesis of football in this country. The MCG, for a lot of people, when you relate it to football, reminds them of Iran in '98, which is one of the more traumatic experiences that Australian football has had in a long time. That World Cup qualifier, or '97, I should say. That World Cup qualifier, that was at the G. We lost that. One of the more traumatic, right? But the fact that the MCG kind of symbolises the complete antithesis to what football is in this country, and kind of pushes against it so greatly. Like, the AFL is probably one of the biggest sabotages of football in this country at any chance that they get, and the fact that the MCG is symbolised by the AFL is symbolised in the MCG and immortalised in the MCG. For the MCG to show the Matildas game around the stadium before the game, to allow people to get to the grounds earlier, to open the gates early for people to watch the Matildas, for the Matildas game to be shown in bars and to be shown in screens all across the stadium, and for thousands of people, including myself, thousands of people paying tickets to watch Carlton vs Melbourne at the MCG, abandoning their seats to go to the bars inside the concourse and to watch the Matildas penalty shootout and to watch the back end of that game. It was a not a light bulb moment for me, but it was it told me two things. It told me that football's unmatched. I love AFL, right? I love it. But football is unmatched. It is unmatched in this country. It unites people like nothing else, and it brings out this feeling like nothing else. And it also shows that why can't the two coexist, right? Why can't the two coexist? Because for that night it did coexist. And when Courtney Vine scores that penalty and the subsequent celebrations in the minutes afterwards at the MCG, the roar when we won was arguably louder than the roar on the final siren when the final siren went when Carlton won, right? And for those who know, you know. For those who don't know, it's not really relevant, right? But the roar was loud, put it that way. The game was being played in Brisbane, and halfway and across the country, people were screaming about it and were celebrating it and were just giving everything to it emotionally. Says a lot about what football can do and what these Matildas have been able to do, right? We obviously all know the scenes around the Socceroos back in Qatar. I'm not going to compare them because in the same way that I'm not going to compare John Aloisi's penalty to Courtney Vine's penalty, they both sit on the same pedestal. They both sit number one. You're not comparing them. And in the same vein, you're not comparing the scenes. As things stands right now, should we go on to win the final, different story, but as things stands right now, I'm not comparing the Matildas scenes and the Socceroos scenes because I think they're the same. As it stands. But to just see the pure joy and the excitement and the camaraderie around the country for these Matildas is special. And it validates a lot. Like, it validates a lot of things. I'm basically going on a very similar tangent to what I went on when the Socceroos got through the group stage at the World Cup, right? So go back and watch that episode of the pod if you wanna basically hear this just speaking about the Socceroos instead of the Matildas. And also, if you want to see me cry, you can go back to that episode. Although I don't know, I probably won't cry today, but look, I won't be too far off. Like football, I don't even know. I'm still a little bit speechless. The game was on Saturday. It's Monday. I still don't really know how to comprehend it. Right? Still really don't really know how to comprehend it. Like this sport means a lot to a lot of people, and these Matildas probably symbolise everything that a lot of people have been fighting for in this country. So a lot of the Matildas have come from the A-League women's competition. Sam Kerr played for Perth Glory, Hayley Razzo, Courtney Vine. Like, these players have come from, like, Mary Fowler, Kai Cooney-Cross, Claire Hunt. These players have come from the A-League women's competition, right? And they're in the 4 best teams in the world. And not only that, is that it validates it validates a lot of what people are fighting for, and that is for the domestic competition in this country to be where it needs to be, and that's one of the better. It's one of the better ones in women's football, and on the men's side needs to be something that people care about and people are engaged with. Even when you look at the Socceroos, a lot of that team that was in Qatar was made in the A-League, right? And the Matildas, not only is it football, but it's women's football in particular, and it's women's sport as well. Because as Australia being a conservative country that it is at its core, it's maybe changing these days, but at its core right now, it's still a very conservative country, especially when it comes to sport. Hence why football isn't really given a chance. Hence why women's sport in general, probably barring the Olympics, doesn't really get given a chance. To see the Matildas do what they're doing makes me so proud to be Australian, like so unbelievably proud, and it makes me so proud to be a football fan as well, because I've come on here and I've spouted so much shit about this sport and about this country when it comes to the Socceroos and even the Matildas in the last couple of weeks, but it feels like you're constantly speaking to a brick wall. It feels like you're constantly crying out to a brick wall. There's no response. And you just pray that the results on the pitch validate what everyone, not just me, what everyone is saying and what a lot of people were crying out for. And that game in Brisbane was, like, what those girls were able to do is magical. Absolutely magical. The drama around that game, Obviously, probably even the little storylines, the storyline of Mary Fowler in that game, having two chances, two probably gilt-edged chances to win the game for Australia. The one in the first half, which was clear on the line, and the one in the second half, which he had piffed right at the keeper. And for her to step up, sudden death penalty, and put a hole in the net at 20 years of age. 20 years old. To do that with the whole nation on you, with the whole nation on your shoulders, being carried by that spot kick is so brave. Like, it is so brave. Like, the stories of Hayley Raso, what she's been through. I mean, the narrative around Sam Kerr. Like, if you had told a lot of people before the start of the tournament Sam Kerr would not start a game up until the semi-finals, you'd think Australia would be knocked out in the group stage. But this squad has fought from underneath, and this squad has fought. And the way the tournament has panned out is eerily similar to the way the Socceroos tournament panned out in Qatar, but also it symbolises everything that football fans and football media people and football pundits and football people have fought for in this country, both on the men's side and the women's side. Probably more specifically the women's side, right? But there's a long way to go. There's still 2 games to go, and why the fuck can't we win it? Like, why can't we win it? England's going to be tough, and Spain or Sweden are going to be even tougher. But why the fuck can't we win it? And yeah, like, they're just the narratives around this squad, like the Claire Hunt story, like not being in the squad 18 months ago, making her debut for the national team 18 months ago. I think it was last February, I think it was. And for her to step up in this tournament and be one of Australia's better defenders, one of Australia's better players, says a lot. Ellie Carpenter's story, Steph Catley's story, Kai Cooney-Cross's story, who's developed into one of the better midfielders in the world. Katrina Gorry has just been so good throughout the tournament. Mary Fowler's story is obviously one that's been well documented, same with Hayley Raso's and Caitlin Ford's. Obviously Sam Kerr's well publicised as well. Mackenzie Arnold's story. I mean, even in that game, if we want to speak about narratives, probably making 2 very good saves throughout the game, one in extra time, one in the first half, I'm pretty sure. And then for her to save the penalty, miss her chance to put herself in the history books. I mean, she already did put herself in the history books, but to put the cherry on top, she missed that chance. Then she saved I think it was the one after the next one, only for it to be called back because she was off her line, then for her to save it again. And then for her to, I think, save one. Oh no, the last one hit the post, but for her to basically be the hero, it says a lot about the mental strength of her, and says a lot about I think the mental fortitude of the squad, and obviously Courtney Vine stepping up, and the feeling around the country. I'm just waffling, I'm just blabbling, and this probably is either going to be a really long episode because I'm going to get through all the rest of the talking points, or I'm just going to stop it at the end of this Matildas talking point. I just need to blabble because we're witnessing history. Like, I can't sit here on this football podcast and speak about the Matildas for 15 minutes. I'm doing it. I'll be doing it a disservice. I just want to blabble about it because we're witnessing sporting history, right? And luckily this game is going to come out before the England game. It's going to come out a day before the England game, so this at least has context, right? And this at least is not going to be outdated. But yeah, like I mentioned it before, but regardless of what happens from here, the Matildas have done something that not a lot of sporting teams have been able to do, and it's completely captured the heart of the whole nation. The Socceroos were able to do it, the Matildas were able to do it, or have been able to do it, and I don't think a lot of other national sporting teams have been able to do it. There's something about football. There's something about the group of professional footballers we have in this country right now. It's special. Like, it's really special. And for a sport that has been on its deathbed for about a decade, maybe not a decade, half a decade, ever since COVID, probably. For a sport that's been on its deathbed, we are witnessing, like, it's something special. and when it comes around, these once in a generation kind of tournaments moments, when they come around, you have to savor them, right? You have to savor them, and you have to live in the moment. You have to be present within the moment because it's not it's not promised to come around again, and you need to take it as it comes. And like we obviously also like for the Matildas, like naturally, right? And this probably comes back down to the conservative nature of sport in this country, which I mentioned before, which I mentioned previously. The conservative nature of football in this country lends itself to kicking to disregarding change as much as possible, right? And the establishment is the establishment. What the establishment, I can go on about what the establishment consists of. What the establishment doesn't consist of is football, and more particularly women's football. We hit the first layer in November with what happened in Qatar. And for the girls to do what they're doing now in their home tournament with so much pressure on them, like I said, makes me so proud to be a football fan and makes me so proud to be a football fan and makes me so proud to be Australian. And I don't even think what I'm saying is making any sense. But like the fact that I'm still in shock. I'm still speechless. I still really can't comprehend what's happening because we're literally witnessing history. Like I kind of caught myself in all the celebrations on Saturday night when I was at the footy, and it was quarter time at the footy, and I caught myself in the celebrations of what was happening in Brisbane and all across the nation. And I was like, this is literally one of the best moments in this country's history, full stop. And for that to be for one of the best sporting moments and for one of the best moments in Australia's history, for that to be a football game but also a women's football game, means a lot to a lot of people. Because like I said, so many, like for the last half a decade, 25 years, it's been brick wall, brick wall, brick wall, brick wall. And sometimes the door gets open when there's World Cups, Asian Cups, when fucking these Del Piero, like the reason why I said Del Piero, like when things like that happen, when David Villa comes, when Del Piero comes, when Heskey comes, when these, oh my god, it's that guy that you recognise for this sport but not in Australia. When they come, the door gets opened. When Australia hosts an Asian Cup and wins it on home soil, the door gets opened. When Australia does well at the Olympics, or when the Matildas do well at the Olympics, the door gets opened. But I feel like what the Matildas have been able to do this tournament is the door was open to them at the start of the tournament. They grabbed the door, they ripped it off the hinges, and they tore the wall down. And the damn walls burst. The damn wall, like this is significant change. What they've been able to do, significant change. Like it transcends just it being a women's football game because of what it symbolises. It symbolises the establishment in this country being kicked in the dick, which is something that hasn't happened in a long time or consistently enough. And it just makes me so proud. Like, it makes me so proud to be Australian and to support football and to support women's football. And yeah, I'm so happy that we finally have role models. Like we have role models now for the next generation. Like, for the next generations of boys and girls, right? For boys and girls, it's, I want to be Haley Razzo, I want to be Caitlin Ford, I want to be Sam Kerr. Even still, I want to be Craig Goodwin, I want to be Matt Leckie, I want to be these people, right? I want to be Harry Sutzer, right? So it works on both sides of things. But dare to dream, I think, is the message overall about this. Dare to dream, because what was the attendance? All the ratings. Yeah, the viewing figures eclipsed any television broadcast over the last 2 decades. Quarterfinal. Imagine the viewing figures on Wednesday night. Heaven forbid we get the job done. Imagine the viewing figures on Sunday night. When we potentially, when these girls create the best sporting day in this country's history. Full stop. Winning a home World Cup. And for it, yeah, I don't know. I'm just so proud. I'm just so proud of these girls, honestly. Just so many narratives, so many stories behind what they've been able to do. So many, just so much behind it. So much behind it. That has been able to not contrive, has contributed to this vibe, this feeling, this energy around the country that's not going to stop. I'll tell you that for free. It's not going to stop. And it's going to be louder on Wednesday night. And it's going to be more prevalent on Wednesday night. So I guess the final kind of thing, if that makes sense, or the final kind of message, just support these girls. Support these girls on Wednesday night. If you haven't jumped on board, then I don't know what the fuck you're doing. I don't know if you're blind, stupid, or deaf or whatever, right? And you can't hear the noise, right? Because if you can't see the atmosphere, if you can't hear the atmosphere, if you can't comprehend the atmosphere, then you're a lost cause. I can't say anything more. If you're not behind them now, then I don't know what to tell you. Because it is sporting history. It is sporting history, and it's not only sporting history, but it's sporting history created by a group of people who have arguably been one of the more I'm trying to find the right word. One of the more discarded groups of people in this country. When you look at funding, when you look at TV rights, when you look at publicity, women's football is 4th tier, 5th tier, 6th tier in this country. So for a women's World Cup quarter-final game between Australia and France to be the largest television broadcast over the past 2 decades says a lot about the demand, and it says a lot about what these girls have been able to do. You cannot take anything away from them because they're the ones driving this. It's such a likeable squad, such an energetic squad, such a squad that is filled with so many stories, so many narratives, and most importantly, talent. It is stupidly talented. Mary Fowler's 20 years old. Sam Kerr's one of the best footballers in the world, if not the best footballer in the world. Definitely the best, probably the best number 9 in the world. Hayley Raso has captured the hearts of the nation. She's so good. Caitlin Ford is so good. Steph Catley is so good. Ellie Carpenter's so good. Katrina Gorry's so good. Cooney Cross, so good. Like I can keep going. And for it to end, I mean, yeah, Courtney Vine's written her name into Australian history. It goes Courtney Vine and John Aloisi. Courtney Vine and John Aloisi are there. Top 2 of not only Australian football, but of Australian sport and Australian history, full stop. It's John Aloisi and Courtney Vine. Who would have thought that 20 years ago, 25 years ago? It shows the power of football. It shows the power of World Cups. And it can't be replicated in any other sport. And if you want to feel this buzz, but tenfold, get behind the A-League women, because that's where all these girls have come from. Do you want to, in 4 years' time, do you want to see the next Caitlin Ford? Watch the A-League women. Watch that competition. Watch that league. Because a player from that league will be playing in this Matilda squad in 4 years, and she might put her name alongside Vine and Aloisi. And the same goes for the men. And the same goes for the men. Watch the A-League, because in 4 years' time or in 3 years' time, there might be a player in this league who can put his name in the likes of Courtney Vine and Joanna Aloisi. And you can say, I saw him or I saw her before it was cool. And that feeling, that vindication, that validation, when you've backed someone, when you've backed an organisation, when you've backed a team, when you've backed a sport, in the face of criticism, in the face of disgust, and in the face of being ignored, when you finally get that validation, the feeling is unmatched. The feeling is unmatched. So let's turn the narrative from, oh, the Matildas were great, yeah, the Socceroos were great, once every 4 years, World Cup, so good, to how good's the A-League, how good's the A-League women's, how good are these Matildas every single time they play, how good are the Socceroos every single time they play. Because if you didn't believe when the Socceroos are doing it, and if you have to believe now that the Matildas are doing it, that something is changing. These girls are making history, like a genuine changing the course of this country level history, not just sport, generally. This could be one of the most significant cultural moments in Australia's history, if we can do the unthinkable. Just a thought. But I think that wraps up. I think that concludes my my tangent rant, kind of. You know what I mean. My love letter to the Matildas, because I just get down to a live site, get down to Stadium Australia, get down to a pub, watch it, share it, do everything in your power to get behind these girls. Because once again, man, I'm telling you, it's history. It's genuine history. As I change the focus levels on the camera, because I feel like this is going to be better. Yeah. Moving on. I'm actually going to take a break. That's what I'm going to do. 35 minutes. So I've got a lot to speak about in just under 10 minutes. Or maybe 15 minutes. We'll see how long this podcast goes for. But yeah, there you go. I'll be 2 seconds. Well, no seconds for you. I'm going to take a break, rest my throat, rest the vocal cords, and then we can go again for the second half of this podcast, shall we say.